Okay, we're getting started with our part two of what to say when someone asks you, "What do you do?" And Peter Rondinelli is doing it for the second week in a row because I had a tremendous amount of people ask for him to go ahead and finish out and to explain even more about what he was doing. So that's what we're doing today. But before I even get into that, I've got to say it. I'm very, very proud of this group. This today is our kind of a red letter day for the group because we did hit our 100th member today, and I'm very, very happy about that. I hope that everyone that is joining to learn about how the chamber can actually grow their business in a proper way. That the chamber influencers, and we call ourselves influencers because when you work with influencers, you become an influencer. And when you work with inside the Chamber of Commerce instead of outside, that makes you even more of an influencer. And that's what we're about here. So for those of you who are looking at this video later and picking up on part two, I just want you to know that this is really strictly for training. We are here only to help you grow your business in sometimes an easier way, an easier contact way, an easier visual way, an easier feeling way. And you'll get the concept as we're growing more and more toward some of our trainings later on about the actual techniques that I personally used to grow my agency using the Chamber of Commerce. So today, I appreciate everybody being on. And I want to make sure that Peter has plenty of time. I do know that one of his star people is not here yet, so we'll find out if she arrives. I had a chance Peter talked to Judith earlier today, and she was thinking about doing all kinds of crazy stuff. So I don't know what you guys talked about, but this may be lively and it may be censored. I don't know exactly, but we will find out exactly how that turns out. She went everywhere from funeral director to skydiver, so who knows what's going to happen.
Absolutely.
All right, so, Peter, it's all yours, buddy. Take over.
Thank you, Chris. So it's been an interesting week since our last event. I've had a chance to talk to a couple different people about what was taught. I hope you all had a chance to see the short 3-minute kind of in-depth explanation, so you had a chance to do some of the homework for today. For those of you that have started the process, we're going to try to jump on one-on-one and actually help you solidify something that you can actually start using as early as tonight if you happen to be going to a chamber event. So one of the things that I discovered in the conversations with people this past week is that I want everyone to understand that there is a purpose for what we're doing, and it's not something that you should use in all scenarios. So what I mean by that is although you can use what you've learned with this particular structure, and let me share my screen just to remind everyone what it is that we're talking about. Even though you can adapt this structure for a variety of conversational situations and introductions, etc., the purpose of this is really for that one-on-one introduction. You're just beginning a conversation with someone, and they ask you the words or similar to, "What do you do?" And the purpose of using this structure is really does not go beyond making sure that you do not get pigeonholed into their expectations based on their experiences. And what I mean by that is when you first meet someone, before they know anything else about you, other than the fact that you're at an event that they're at and that they may know your name because you have it on a tag, all they really know about you is what you tell them in that moment. And as if the first thing that you tell someone is your title or an explicit description in 2 or 3 words of what you offer to clients, as an example, and this is an example I gave last week as well. If you say the words financial planner, they may have experiences related to a financial planner that put you in their eyes as someone that they may not want to continue having a conversation with. Now, for myself, before I got involved on the marketing side, I used to be an IT guy, and I would call myself an IT consultant or a computer guy, and they would instantly say something like, "Oh, you mean like Geek Squad?" Now, for someone trying to tell a business owner that we can work with all the advanced computer systems in their environment, getting compared to a retail storefront that happens to have technically capable 19-year-olds working for them, it's a hard connection to make. So it was important that I introduced myself in a way that they would not just assume I'm like someone that they've experienced before. Plus, I'm a very unique individual, and I like people to think about me in a very unique way. And that's the purpose of this. The purpose of this is when you first introduce yourself, instead of simply stating what you do in terms of the name of your title, the name of your program, the name of your service, you want to coach it in terms that they can instantly connect that they are a potential client, that they experience a problem that you can that they understand, and that you address that problem to make their life better. If you can string all four ideas together in that first 30 to 45 seconds, then they will look at you in such a way that they will want to continue the conversation. They are very intrigued by what you are saying, and they won't outright ignore you because they had a bad experience last year with someone in a similar role. So I just wanted to make sure that you all understand that if you stand up in front of a group of 20 people and you introduce yourself, you cannot say, "Have you ever noticed?" You may use what you learn here to revise it appropriate for the group, but you can't use it in that scenario. Another example is that if you have a 15-minute conversation with someone and then you later call them on the phone, you do not want to say, "Have you ever noticed how?" Not appropriate to use it when you're following up with someone. I hope does that make sense to everyone? Just a quick wave if you're unmuted. Okay, so it's just really important. This is about creating intrigue. Another way to kind of explain this briefly is that a sales when you are looking for new clients, new customers, there is a process that you go through. Everything from introduction all the way to the point where they actually pay you money. There are multiple steps involved in doing that, and one of the steps, as most of you are aware, is to ask a bunch of questions, get a bunch of feedback, and then recommend a solution. This conversation introduction is, as you might guess, at the way beginning. So once you've started getting into everything else, it may be appropriate to use what you learn, but this exact structure is only appropriate before you make all those discoveries and everything else. I hope everyone followed along with that. So because we gave you some homework and hopefully some people had time to sit down and do that homework, does anyone want to go ahead and unmute and see what you've come up with and see what we can do as far as helping make suggestions?
What do you think, Devin? You ready?
Yeah, I'll try. I'll give it a shot.
All right. So Devin, have you had a chance to fill this form out at all in terms of practicing or at least brainstorming some ideas?
I was thinking in my head, so I'll just go from the top.
Okay. So let's go ahead and give me some examples of the type of people that you are interacting with at a chamber event that you want to do business with. Give me 2 or 3 examples of people that you have spoken to before or expect to speak to.
I was thinking about like restaurants, is my main one.
Okay, so restaurants, any others?
And barbers. And
Barbers, okay. And when you are speaking to a restaurant owner for the very, very first time, and you're shaking their hand, and you know they're a restaurant owner because on their tag, it says the name of a restaurant that you're actually familiar with. In your head, what problem do you expect that person has in common with most other restaurant owners?
a problem getting in more customers on a continuous basis.
Okay. Let's dive in a little bit. Would you agree with the statement that not every restaurant has a problem getting new customers?
No, like there's obviously really solid good businesses that continue to bring in customers.
Okay.
But they can always get more, obviously.
Okay, so that's an important distinction, and some of the questions I'm going to ask you, Devin, through this process, is to help everyone on this call to really kind of get to the underlying problem as opposed to just the superficial problem. So the idea that restaurants don't have enough customers is not really the problem. The problem is that they want more. So whether they have 10 customers or they have 100 customers for lunch, that restaurant owner most likely wants more than what he already has. Is that? Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. Now, is there anything that may cause a restaurant owner not to be able to get more customers on their own? Is there anything specific that they either lack, for example, lack experience, don't have the right people, don't spend enough money, don't do it correctly? Is there any underlying reason that they're unable to get as many customers as they want?
Absolutely. There's actually multiple reasons that they could have. And one of the reasons could be they just don't have enough marketing or social or time, in fact, to do that.
Okay. Now you mentioned time as your example for that. How common do you think that is for restaurant owners? Is it extremely common or sort of common? Very common. Okay. So far what we're talking about is restaurant owners, and the underlying problem that we've discovered up to this point is they don't have the time and or resources to get as many customers in the door as they would like. Okay, does that make sense so far, Devin?
Yep, makes sense.
Okay, you're really tiny on my screen, so I didn't see you nodding.
Okay.
My apologies. So basically, what we've done is we've picked out an industry, and on the problem, we started at the surface, which is kind of obvious, and what that they don't have enough customers. But then we dig down a little bit deeper, at least in our own minds, to really get to an underlying thing that someone can't disagree with. And what I mean by that is, if you take a random restaurant owner and you tell them, you know how most restaurants don't have enough customers, they might stop and say, well, I'm not sure, some do. Right. You may also say some restaurants would like to have more customers. Yeah, that's probably true. And then where we landed was some restaurants don't have the time and energy to get all the customers they want. Now, the restaurant owner can't really refute that. He has to agree with that. And because it's something that virtually 100% of the restaurant owners you speak to, that's why it fits this structure. Is it making sense, Devin?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So just as an exercise, can you go ahead and put the two things that we've talked about in this upper part for you? Mm-hmm. Can you try to word it in your own words, and we'll stop it right there and then continue on describing.
Okay. Sure. So just like start like, hey, how's it going, or whatever.
Well, I'll say, hey, my name's Pete. So what do you do, Devin?
Well, Pete, I'm glad you asked. Have you ever noticed how restaurant owners do not have enough time?
So make sure you use the words. Have you ever noticed how, and then often experience.
Okay, yeah.
And with the problem, take it all the way to what they don't have time for.
So have you ever noticed how restaurants often experience not have enough time to market their business?
Remember the thing that we kind of dug down to was the time to get all the customers that they want to come through the door.
Okay.
So do it one more time.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad you asked. Have you ever noticed how restaurant owners often experience not having enough time to have customers go through the door?
Close. So we'll stop there, but I hope everyone listening could kind of hear the difference as he progressed through those different examples, how it just got a little bit more obvious that you kind of had to agree with them. And that's the part that we're trying to accomplish with this description of what they often experience is, can they basically agree 100% of the time so they can self-identify. So the first part of this is self-identifying who you work with and why you work with them. So if you're telling them that you work with a restaurant owner who doesn't have enough time to get all the customers and business that he wants, and he self-identifies as that person, then he has subliminally already decided to work with you. Okay, so that's why we're doing it in this structure. Now, the reason you want to wait for an answer is sometimes you've hit the nail on the head so well that the person will actually get excited and say the words, yeah, that's me. Now, if they say that, not only is it going to feel good that you've actually you've potentially met a new client in that moment, but it's something that you can come back to and mention later on during the sales process, that basically the first time you met, you hit it on the nail so well that there's really nothing that can prevent them from working with you. And if they're not working with you yet, then you have to get to the bottom of why they're not working with you, because it's not your ability to solve the problem, if that makes sense. Okay, so Devin, are you ready for the second part?
Yes.
All right. So now that we have the restaurant owner and we've talked about their time and their ability to get new customers, what we're going to describe to them is we're going to describe how you solve the problem. And let me bring up my little notes here because I don't remember. We're going to describe basically people that identify as that restaurant owner with not enough time will use your solution in order to make their problem disappear. And what I say to make the problem disappear, the reason I'm choosing those words is that sometimes people don't expect for a problem to be fixed. They would like for a problem to go away. Like if a problem is fixed, it could still be there and still kind of be aggravating. But if it goes away, then it's not something they have to think about anymore. And I think everyone on this call can agree, as a business owner, the more problems you can get rid of, the happier you are at the end of the day when you go to sleep. So by addressing, just basically coaching it in those terms, it's an important distinction between just solving a problem and making a problem disappear. So Devin, what product or service do you have that will help make the problem of not enough time to get new customers go away?
So one is using loyalty programs for businesses.
Loyalty programs. Okay. So that's a product or what I guess it's a service, right? Where it's an automation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you have a loyalty program. Now, I understand that very astute and restaurant owners who have been around a long time may be familiar with the terms loyalty program, but will 100% of the restaurant owners you talk to be familiar with the loyalty program?
So not probably all will know what that is because maybe they're just starting a business. So.
Okay. So is there a different set of words that we can describe your service of what happens when you implement a loyalty program for them in terms of kind of a broad stroke, non-technical explanation? And I'll give an example if you have a tough time with it, but I want to see what you say first.
We'll have a solution that allows you to connect with your customers on a regular basis to bring them back into the door.
Okay. So does that solve the time problem?
No, it doesn't solve that time.
Okay. So can we coach it in terms of a time problem?
Yeah. Well, I have a solution that will help you, or that will help you solve not having enough time to do this by implementing a solution that will help bring more customers into your door through being able to connect with them more.
Okay. And now, just to get everyone else a little bit interactive, does anyone want to jump in for this second and just kind of say, give an example of words that might be used in this situation that is a little bit more succinct and specific to what we're talking about? Does anyone want to jump in before I throw in my 2 cents to Devin here? Anyone? Just unmute and say hello. No? Okay. All right, Devin. So as I'm listening to you,
okay. John, have you been on long enough to catch on here?
Hey, can you hear me?
I can hear you, buddy.
I jumped in a little bit late, so are we asking for feedback on the first 2 parts or how you solve the problem?
So right now we're discussing how you solve the problem, and what we're doing is we're trying to coach Devin into how to phrase his service regarding solving the problem of not enough time to get more customers for a restaurant owner.
Not enough time.
Yeah. So just I'm trying to make sure that you're all kind of thinking on your feet in this situation as we're following along. So if you haven't been involved in the whole conversation, then go ahead and put yourself on mute. I want to just continue on and as we select more people, we'll go through this a couple more times. So no worries there. So Devin.
I save you the time and hassle of figuring out how to bring more customers in on a consistent basis so that you can focus on running your restaurant, on all the other aspects of running your restaurant.
Okay. So Devin, does that sound like it? At least that sounded a little bit clear, but
yes.
But I have to ask, does it sound like it's not quite there yet?
Yeah, I could use a little work. It's pretty
right.
Work.
So what's missing right now from that, and it was a little bit of improvement of what you said, Devin, only because she was a little bit more succinct. But what's missing, and by the way, thank you, Yvonne.
Can I just say something? I don't think
yes.
The problem is the lack of time. I think the problem is getting customers in the door on a predictable, recurring basis.
So the reason we're talking about the time of getting the time to get people in the door is because that's what we had chosen as our problem above. So we're continuing on the same thought process.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you once again, Yvonne. So Devin, what's missing is an actual solution to what the problem was. And the problem, once again, was time and more customers. And if you're getting more customers, that doesn't necessarily solve the time. And if you're saving them time but not getting enough customers, it's not saving both of them, right?
Correct.
So what you have to come up with is you have to come up with some shortcut descriptions like, well, I work with restaurant owners or restaurants to automate their follow-up with existing customers to get more people coming back more often, right? So if you use a word like automate, it signifies a solution and or piece of software and or process. And then getting more customers in the door, you can describe in a couple different ways, either getting people to come more often, getting new customers to come in, getting people to spend more money. There's a variety of ways that you can describe that. In this case, if we do automate to get your customers returning more often, or automate communication with your customers. And then once you've described the solution from a bland perspective, you're not telling them how you solve it. Technically, you're telling them how you solve it with a broad stroke, right? Automation in this case. And then you're saying you're getting people to come more often. Both those things make sense to the person, even if they don't know how to use the computer, even if they understand nothing about websites, even if you said the word Google to them, they would ask you how that's spelled, right? People understand the concept of automation, and people understand the concept of customers coming again and again. The more often, the more money. So that's the only reason in this scenario we're using that. But does it make sense how you're actually explaining what you already said, just in much fewer words?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now the "so that" part is what they get out of it. So if a restaurant owner doesn't have enough time to market, and you use automation to get his customers to come in more often, what happens to that restaurant owner's business? What is the outcome? What does that restaurant owner experience?
So that your restaurant.
Let's just talk about ideas. Let's not coach it in that phrase yet.
Okay.
So what happens? He makes more money?
So that I can make more money, increase business.
But his employees make more tips. He can grow his business, maybe even open a new location.
Mm-hmm.
He makes more money for his family. He can send his kids to college. He can go on vacation more often. Do you think we can probably keep going on and on and on?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if by chance you've been able to have the person tell you a little bit about themselves before they asked you, what do you do? And in that conversation, up to that point, let's say they told you they were an avid fisherman, you can actually coach this last part as follows, so that you can make more money and go fishing more often with your family. Does that make sense?
Yep, makes sense.
Okay. Now, whatever you say under "so that," this is the part that people will remember the most. Everything you said before this is for them to self-identify. They've self-identified as a restaurant owner. They've self-identified as they don't have enough time. And they've self-identified they understand the concept of automation and getting customers in more often. And now you've just allowed them a moment to think of how nice it would be to go fishing more often.
Mhm.
Right? So with all that said, you want to try to take it all the way through once, or do you want me to say it quickly so you can hear it once and then I'll have you repeat it?
I'll give it a shot.
Okay, go ahead.
What was your name again?
Peter, just say it. Just introduce yourself, and then I'll ask you the question, or just say hi. I'm Devin.
Okay. Hey, I'm Devin.
Oh, hi, Devin. So what do you do?
Well, Peter, I am glad you asked. And have you ever noticed how restaurant owners often have not enough time, and often experience not have enough time to help to be able to bring more clients into the door?
Yeah, I have that problem myself.
Well, I have solutions that will help you be able to bring more clients in the door so that you can have more time to fish.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and say I'm going to repeat this whole statement based on our discussion so far. And Devin, I'm not correcting you. I'm just saying it a little differently so you have an alternative way to say it. And everyone else, I want you to understand how this development of this goes. And what I'm about to say is no way perfect, but is usable. And so I'll go ahead and start. So hi, I'm Peter.
Hi,
Devin.
Peter.
Yeah, say the what do you do?
So what do you do?
Devin, I'm glad you asked. Have you ever noticed how restaurant owners often experience just not having enough time to really get as many customers as they want and fill all the seats in a restaurant?
Oh, yes, I'm aware of that.
Well, I offer an automation. Or I'm sorry. Well, I offer a solution that automates the process of contacting your existing customers to bring them in the door more often, so that your business makes more money and you have more time to go fishing with your family, or to spend time with your family. I hope that kind of makes sense how we started off with not a real clear idea about what the problem was, and have ended up in an example of even though probably none of you are restaurant owners, it makes a lot of sense how that restaurant owner is going to be interested in what we have to offer. Chris, do you want to jump in and give some feedback?
The first question I ask when I walk up to somebody in a networking group, I have no idea what business he's in.
Mm-hmm.
I can look at his tag and maybe guess, but usually it's a logo. It's got some name to it. If it's a restaurant, it's probably obvious it's a restaurant, but you don't have a lot of restaurant people going to networking events because they're just too dang busy. And by the way, I don't know any restaurant owner if you say it so you can have more time to go fish, because they are 7 days a week, 24 hours a day if they're a restaurant owner. But that's just the fact of life. They don't have time to go fishing. Even if you tried to give them time to go fishing, they don't have time. So I'm curious about if I'm walking into a group of people that I know nothing about.
Absolutely.
I don't know who they are from Adam, but I do care who they are. But if I walk up to somebody and I just see a name tag, in fact, many of these groups gatherings, they don't have a business name tag that they use in business. They just have John on a sticky that sticks to their shirt.
Absolutely. So first of all, Devin, thank you. And I want to mention to you, Devin, that if you want me to spend more time with you and helping you clarify some ideas. I can be available offline for you.
Sounds
Because
good,
I've
Peter.
helped some other people in the recent week. So, Chris, let's go. By the way, Chris, do you prefer Christopher or Chris?
Chris is fine. Thank you.
Okay, Chris. I'm going to use you for a second.
Wait, before you start on me, I want to jump back in. My buddy Yvonne, I want
Okay.
because Yvonne is a full service marketing person. She covers the gamut. So
Perfect.
instead of using me, Yvonne, are you willing, buddy? Baby? I mean, ma'am, you want to be a guinea pig?
Well, my head right now also is in the restaurant marketing, so I don't know that I
No.
No.
We're
We're
talking
going to pick
about
a new subject.
we're walking into a group of people that you know nothing about and see a name tag on his that says John, and you don't know
Okay.
who he is or what he does.
right.
Okay. So, and actually, Yvonne, before we jump into that, and thank you for volunteering your time. What I want to do is I want to kind of explain for a second what it is that these first two things are doing, and that is we're just trying to get the person to self-identify. Oh, you're talking about someone like me. That's the thought you want them to go through their head. The moment when you say, have you ever noticed how? It can be as something as bland as, chamber members. It can be if the person's wearing a suit, you could actually say the words, have you ever noticed how someone who wears suits to work, that I don't like that one, but that person will certainly self-identify. You can use something that you know about everyone at the event. You can use something about why it is that you're meeting them. The idea about describing who you work with in a term that they can self-identify is to get them to think to themselves, oh, you mean like me? If you can get them to think that thought, then they are already thinking of themselves as a potential client of yours. If you walk up to a plumber and you say, have you ever noticed how doctors, and really no matter what you say after that, the person's going to assume you don't work with plumbers. Right. So that's the purpose of it. And Chris, kind of to address your primary concern as we get into this, you just have to think of generic ways of describing people. And the default for me is small business owner. But sometimes I get annoyed by that phrase, so I try to come up with other phrases. So Yvonne, what was the last chamber event you went to?
It was a ribbon cutting for a new event venue.
Okay. And what kind of venue was it? Just a meeting place? Was it a restaurant, a banquet hall?
It was a large event venue that they rent out for weddings and conferences.
Excellent. And did you meet a lot of people?
Yeah, I met a fair number of people. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And was there any one or two people that stuck out in your mind that you thought to yourself, boy, I wish I would have handled that better in terms of that initial kind of conversation about them and you and what you do?
Yeah, I mean, I can't think specifically, but I'm sure I could have done better.
So how about someone that maybe you actually had a good conversation with that you'll probably have a follow-up conversation with? Anyone in particular?
I did connect with a business consultant there, and we have had a follow-up meeting as a result of my conversation with her there.
Okay, perfect. So is that when you say business consultant, are you speaking to someone that offers services to other businesses, not in the same category, but kind of similar concept as you?
Business management advice.
Business management. Okay.
So, I'm already planting seeds for her to connect me with clients. she has clients who might need website services or marketing services.
Fantastic. So potentially a partnership or referral relationship, correct?
Right.
Okay. Now, when the conversation started with this person, can you remember at all how you introduced what you did, if the person asked, or how it came up?
Well, she's also in another smaller networking marketing group that I'm in, and she was like a speaker at a meeting I attended there. So I just went up to her at the chamber event and said, "Hey, I'm Yvonne Herbst. I heard you talk at the Elite Networking Mixer. I really enjoyed your talk. I'd love to connect with you. I do digital marketing, so I just like to schedule a time to get together for coffee, learn more about what you do, that sort of thing."
Okay, perfect. So she didn't prompt you to explain what you did. Yeah, you just kind of offered it as a result of her having seen her at the previous event. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay. So one quick note: this particular structure may not apply in terms of the have you ever, often experienced, etc. But we can use the concept here. So if you, in that situation, did you know she was a business management consultant?
Well, just we might want to take this. I've actually connected there with a woman I've been out of touch with for years, and she actually is in charge of retaining chamber members.
Okay.
So she and I are getting lunch together. We're meeting next week for coffee.
Perfect.
I've been out of touch with her for years, so I mean, we could maybe practice how I would approach
Perfect.
her.
I love the idea that you offered that because it is going to be a little easier to coach it under these terms. So, at this point, has that individual really gotten an opportunity to ask you what you do yet, or have you they just know your digital marketing and that's it?
She just knows very high level. I do marketing. That's
right. And so when you sit down with her, you're going to want a chance to really kind of explain it.
Exactly.
Yeah,
right.
She will most certainly ask. So what do you do now? What is it that your company does? All right. So this person, no, she works for the chamber. Is that her full-time job, or is she a volunteer or a part-time person and has her own business on the side?
I'm pretty sure it's a paying job. Like I say, I've been out of touch with her for a long time, so I'll find out more when I meet with her. But I'm under the impression it's a full-time paying job.
Okay. So is it fair to say that your primary goal with her, other than reconnecting as human beings and everything that goes with that, is an opportunity to get referrals from her or introductions to other people?
I want to get on her radar screen, so if she meets someone who could benefit from what I have to offer, she'll think of me.
Perfect. So in this situation, even though I have the words people like them, we're going to switch this up a little bit. We're going to try to describe people you would like to work with that she knows.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what we want to do is we want to say, have you ever noticed how, and then use a short descriptor that she can say, oh yeah, I know people like that. Now, one of the shortcuts I've used, I'm just going to give you this one so we can save a couple minutes. If you're talking to a chamber representative or a chamber employee or someone that works for the chamber, at this point, I would ever say, have you ever noticed how chamber members? Right? Because at that point, it means everyone that belongs to the chamber is a potential referral for you. Okay? And now you want to experience, you want to describe a problem that most chamber members experience that's related to your service or products. Now you said digital marketing, and I noticed you're like me because I do digital marketing too. I sometimes explain it as everything else that goes on. So can we pick out or what we're going to do is we're going to go through an exercise of trying to uncover the underlying problem that you're actually going to that most chamber members actually have. And what I mean by that is, rather than just describing something simple like they want more customers, we want to find something that's a little bit more obvious and targeted, that everyone has that difficulty. So is there, as you've gone to one or two of these chamber events, you've met a few people, and there's probably some stuff that you've seen people actually have as a problem. There's some stuff that that business owners as a general rule have. So let me ask, can you brainstorm with me a little bit to see if you can kind of maybe try to think of some problems that most people have in common that attend chamber events? Like, what's a problem that you can think of? And if it has to be broad, just start off with broad, and I'll ask probing questions.
Mm-hmm.
So,
have you ever noticed how chamber members?
No. Hold on. We're just brainstorming ideas on step 2 here.
Okay.
So, as an example, a problem that they have is they don't have enough customers.
Right.
A problem that they have is they have a website that doesn't look good on mobile. Okay.
Right.
So I want to brainstorm some problems, and then I want to see if there's underlying problems that we can identify. So based on conversations you've had up to this point at chamber events, is there any kind of common issue that you've seen that's so obvious that everyone would have to agree with you?
I mean,
first thing that comes to mind.
What about they don't know what to do if they get a bad review?
Okay.
Bad review.
That's certainly a problem that some people will agree with. Now, has everyone had a bad review?
Not necessarily. I mean, that's the thing. Not everyone.
Okay. All right. But let me ask, why would people be worried about a bad review?
Because it leaves, it can make it can discourage them from hiring people, from potential customers.
So what you're saying is that if a business owner had got a bad review, they might lose out on an opportunity to earn someone's business.
Right.
Okay. Now, if that company doesn't have any reviews, are they still worried about that?
I don't think they're necessarily worried, because it's just not necessarily on their radar screen.
Okay. Which of the following do you think is more likely? That they're worried about getting bad reviews, or they're worried about a bad reputation online?
I think they'd be more worried about a bad reputation, how it could damage the business. And I'll give you an example. I met with a bankruptcy attorney last week, and they generally get good reviews, but one person really posted on Google a scathing review, and they were asking me what to do about it.
Sure.
Yeah. And it was a bogus, I mean, it was a situation where the reviewer never even worked with them. She was just pissed off at something about them, and she decided to post a bad review. And she was never a paying customer or client.
Sure. Now, before I continue on for a second, I just want to mention that if reviews were all that you did, we would continue down the subject, and we would get to the underlying thing that people would have in common related to reviews. But because you are digital marketing overall, I want to pull back for a second, and I want to take it another direction. And that is, this person that you met regarding the bad review was talking to you at a chamber event on what to do about that, which implies something.
It wasn't at a chamber event, but we can.
Right. Okay. But I want to mention that what that really implies is that person didn't have someone to ask.
Right. Mhm.
Okay, so one of the underlying problems, and this is the direction I'd like to take this for a second, is that marketing is so complicated that business owners have a tough time just being able to ask questions to people that know the answers.
Right. Mhm.
Okay, do you think that most chamber members experience uh, difficulty in knowing who to ask when they encounter a problem regarding marketing that they don't even know what question to ask?
I like that. I like
Okay,
that.
so basically, what we've done is starting out with the concept of a review and really being kind of flummoxed. Look, I offer 15 different services. I don't really know which one to talk about because I don't know anything about the person. Well, you know what? They don't have someone like you, so they don't even know what to ask about.
Mhm.
Right? So we're going to use that as the underlying problem. So I'm just going to throw this out real quick, and then I'm going to have you kind of say it in your words as well. So we're just doing the first part. We're going to stop at that middle, and then we'll go on to the second. So can you, I'm going to say, hi, my name's Peter, and then you can say, Peter, so what do you do? Okay.
Okay.
Hi, Yvonne, I'm Peter.
Hi, Peter. Nice to meet you. Tell me a little bit about what you do.
Yvonne, I'm so glad you asked. You know, have you ever noticed how fellow chamber members often experience uh, um, marketing that's so complicated and all the changes that are happening on the internet that they just really need someone to be able to um, ask questions to that know what they're talking about?
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so now I didn't very much like the way I said it, which I kind of like because maybe you can improve upon it. I'm going to do the reverse to you, and as everyone's listening here, I want to remind you that the hope of everyone's reaction as they're listening to this is that they start nodding, like, yeah, I understand that exactly. So, Yvonne, go ahead and say hi, and then I'll ask you what you do, and I want you to kind of try to use the language. Have you ever noticed how often experience, and see if you can put it in the terms that we were just talking about, and just try to keep it short and sweet in terms of don't don't elaborate too much. Just try to be specific. So let's go ahead and try it one time and see what happens.
Okay. Hey, Peter.
Hi, Yvonne. Nice to meet you. So what do you do?
I'm glad you asked, Peter. Have you ever noticed how chamber members just feel confused about how to go about marketing their businesses, and they don't even have someone they can turn to ask if they're wondering whether they should be doing this or that, whether they need a new website, whether they should be on social media, what the best thing to do is?
Most of those things, yes. All right. So the first part was sounding fantastic. The problem is it didn't end, and I had to keep track of all the things you were asking me, and about halfway through, I was like, no, I don't need that. No, maybe not that. No, so I went through a mental adjustment as you were talking. The longer you were talking, the less in common I had with what you were talking about.
Okay.
So I loved are confused about,
Mhm.
and instead of marketing, let's call it how to market online,
Okay.
right? Because it's more specific, right? So, and the reason I'm making the distinction is confused about marketing. I don't know what you're talking about. I've been marketing, or I've been running ads in the newspaper for decades. I know exactly what I'm doing, right?
Okay.
They don't necessarily agree with that, but they can agree that online marketing is confusing. And the reason we know that is all of us are marketing professionals in one respect or another, and we're all still a little confused about everything we do. primarily because it changes every 3 weeks. So they have no choice but to agree with us. Even if you're talking to an SEO expert, he will have to agree. Okay, so now that we've gotten gotten in this situation, the person to identify all of the chamber members she knows, and to agree that online marketing is probably confusing for all of them, let's go ahead and describe a problem that she can understand and how it relates to the people she might refer to you. Okay? Are you ready?
Okay.
All right. So basically, when you're talking about how you solve a problem, what you're basically doing is you're describing that people that you've already kind of encapsulated above use your service or product to make the problem disappear. So now the problem that we talked about, once again, was confusion on how online marketing works, correct?
Right.
Okay. How does one of your services or products or you as a provider help eliminate and completely remove the problem of being confused about online marketing?
Okay, well, you want me to answer?
We're brainstorming, so just some feedback on what how you solve that problem.
Well, like we were talking about with Devin, I can set up automated systems that do the marketing for them.
Okay.
So that they can bring more customers, clients in on a predictable and recurring basis.
Okay. So if someone is worried about things being confusing, is setting up an automated system make things more confusing or less confusing?
Well, it should take the confusion away because it's done.
So I'm talking about conversationally, right? Not the end result. The end result is automation always makes things simpler. But when you're talking to someone who's already confused, by telling them that you use automation, you're going to confuse them further. Okay, this is very specific to the problem we've described before. So let me give you a thought. So one of the ways that you could solve the problem of confusion is that you offer an organized way to answer all of their questions, right? That would eliminate some confusion. You're available to them to answer questions. You can limit the concepts that they have to even concern themselves about, so that they don't have to learn all the confusing things. So what I'm getting at is the problem that you're trying to solve of confusion. The way you solve that confusion is you make it less confusing. And one of the ways you might do that is you do all the research for them so they don't have to. So they don't have to interpret the technical jargon. Right? Does that make sense?
Right.
Okay. So as I'm kind of thinking through this, I'm thinking, okay, if you can say the phrase, well, I work with small business owners to offer custom research to help identify the most cost-effective solutions that they should be using. Does it make sense how rather than talking about automation or websites or anything else, what I'm basically saying is I do the research for you?
Right.
Okay. Now the next step, so that, and the client experiences something, Now, this goes back to exactly why their life is going to be better now that you've solved this problem. So I work with small business owners to help or to do the research to find out what's most appropriate for their business so that they can spend less time worrying about what technology to use and know that they have an expert that they can call anytime they have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now keep in mind that the only reason we're talking about solving the problem of confusion is that that's what we decided up top
Right.
to identify,
Right.
right? So, and one of the reasons why I'm going through this with everyone time after time is the fact is digital marketing solves a lot of different problems.
Right.
And each one of those problems can have a whole different dialogue.
Right.
And eventually we may all want to use all those dialogues. But for now, we have to somewhere to start.
Right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So do you have any questions about the second part, Yvonne?
No, I don't think so.
Do you want to kind of verbalize a couple of tries on the well I and so that part?
Okay.
Okay. And remember, the fewer the words, the better, but still try to get the idea across.
Okay. Well, I make myself available to small business owners to find out what their most pressing problems are in online marketing and then identify solutions to those problems that will so that they can um, get back to running their business.
Okay. Now remember, the problem was confusion,
Right.
right?
Right.
So part of your so that statement should be so they don't have to be confused, right? So you have to explain that confusion. It's uh, so let's try it one more time. But when you say the well I, instead of using a word like solutions, you might use a word like research to say what you do as opposed to what you have.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's you don't want to say well I sell digital marketing in order to, right? It's more about well and then the I reduce your confusion is the concept you're trying to say. You're not trying to name something that you're doing. And when you say the word solution, it implies it's a thing as opposed to something that's done. Does that make sense?
Right.
Okay. Actually, let me try to use this myself based on what we've talked about, and then I'll let you try again. So, well, I work with small business owners to help them better decide on what technologies are appropriate for their business so that they don't have to spend hours and hours and hours researching the hundreds of different ways that you can market online.
Mm-hmm.
Does it make sense that I didn't really tell them what I do other than the fact that I'm just going to save them time in that situation? I'm just going to make it easier for them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So go ahead and take one more shot at it.
Okay. Well, I work with small business owners to identify what's getting in the way of marketing themselves effectively online, and then identify the technologies that are most appropriate for them so they don't have to spend hours and hours of time researching technologies that might not be right for them.
Okay, not bad. Instead of identify, what I would say is decide
Mhm.
what so what and this is a semantic reason not to use identify, and that is if you identify a solution, they have to evaluate. If you
Right.
help them decide, their work is done.
Right.
Right. So while I work with small business owners to help them decide on what marketing technologies apply to their business, is a little bit more succinct way of saying exactly what you said.
Right.
Okay. All right. Do you want to go through it one more time, just to let you kind of think it through in a continuous pattern? The whole thing?
Sure.
All right. So, hi, Yvonne. Nice to meet you. So, what do you do?
I'm glad you asked, Peter. Well, have you ever noticed how chamber members experience confusion about the best way to use digital technologies to grow their business?
Yeah, I have that problem.
Yeah, well, I make myself available to chamber members to ah.
No, that's fine. Help them decide.
I make myself available to chamber members to discuss their goals and help them decide which digital technologies can help them best achieve those goals.
Yeah, skip the part before you decide. Would you say?
I
Uh,
help. Okay.
I can't even remember what. Chris, can you jump in? Did you hear what she said right there?
I did, but I can't remember it either. She was
so
cranking though. She was doing a good job there.
yeah, you just threw in a couple extra words that weren't necessary, and you can just jump directly to help them decide what technologies are they should use for their marketing, so that, and I'll let you finish.
So that they can stop feeling confused and grow their business more effectively.
Yeah.
See my thumbs?
Yeah. Thank you. That
So I hope everyone kind of heard that last part, which is the one that they're going to walk away remembering, so that they can feel less confused
And grow their business.
and grow their business. Right? So the top part is, for this lady you're going to meet in the upcoming days here for the chamber, is she's going to say, oh, so you're going to help all of our chamber members be less confused and be able to get more business? Here, there's someone I want you to talk to right now. Right? It may not happen, but sometimes it does. Sometimes when you put this together, there's nothing else necessary, because you've just hit the nail on the head. It's kind of like the luxury of being a doctor sometimes, especially an ER doctor, is that when the person walks in the door, you know exactly what's wrong with them. Right.
Well, Peter, I think Yvonne just hit it out of the park with that one. Especially that last statement. That's absolutely fabulous for the ending of a statement, talking to somebody that she doesn't even know. Now, I will, I know we're doing some case studies and some work here. I have another person on the line named Blaine, and he also is in the full service marketing business. Would you like to go through some of this with him?
Hi, Blaine.
Oh, hi, Peter.
How are you? There you go. I see you now. All right. So, by the way, Yvonne, thank you.
I appreciate
it. All right, Blaine. Let me back that up for a second. All right. So, Blaine, I'm going to kind of ask some of the same questions that I've asked some other people, but let's start with, have you recently attended a chamber event, or is it something you've not done yet?
Nothing recently.
Nothing recently. Okay.
I went to meetings.
Say again?
I went to some business networking events a few years ago, but nothing recently.
Okay. And when you went to the events a few years ago, was it the same business or was it for something different?
Everybody had a different business,
No, I mean you.
but yeah, the same business that I'm in now.
Okay, perfect. So you've been doing it for a while?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And for the last couple of years, what's the primary way that you've gotten new customers? Is it referrals?
Yes.
Okay. And are you planning on beginning to attend chamber events? Is that why you're with us today?
Yeah, well, I'm a friend of Christopher's, and then I listen to what he has to say, and these are great ideas. I've identified my local chamber, and so now I'm aware of who I should be contacting, or maybe I've also been aware of some meetings that are coming up and that sort of thing. So now I'm aware of what I could do to go to meetings.
Okay. And would it be accurate to say that you're trying to get comfortable enough on how to communicate with people so that you don't start making excuses not to go?
Yeah, I mean, I'm comfortable.
All right. So my apologies. I wanted to throw that out there as just kind of a note for everyone. Years ago, I used to attend events, 4, 5, 6 events a week easily. And the last few years, I've attended basically none. And one of the things that's kept me at home is I am constantly making excuses to not go to events. And usually it has to do with I'm not sure how to explain my business. And one of the reasons that I mention this is one of the other than just being able to help all of you, one of the reasons that I'm being proactive here with this group is I am just like the rest of you trying to come up with ways of introducing myself using this identical strategy, and working with each of you actually helps me to solidify my thoughts. So as we're going through this one, if you haven't done it already, I want you to follow along mentally and actually come up with what you would say if you were Blaine, and maybe even kind of write those things down, because even though you may not be solving the identical problem that Blaine's going to mention as we go through this, the actual exercise of going through the process will help you get to a point in the future that you can think of a completely new problem that you solve and define an outcome on your feet. And as you do this more and more, you can do it with pretty much anyone that you encounter quite easily. And I know this from personal experience. I used to be that good, and obviously now I'm not, but I'm getting better with every example we're doing. So, Blaine, are you ready?
Sure.
Excellent. Okay, so first of all, are there any specific categories of business, niches that you work with in your full service marketing business, or that you prefer to work with?
Well, I've worked with a couple of plumbers. I'm working with a guy now who's a counselor.
A counselor?
Yeah.
What kind of counselor? Like a social worker type thing, or?
Well, he's a cross between a coach and more of a spiritual counselor. But
Okay.
he tries to get outside of the spiritual realm into just personal coach.
Sure. Now, so you work with plumbers, you work with some coaches, any other people that you currently work with, or is there any type of business that you want to focus when you go to a chamber event, or are you just open to just about anyone?
I'm pretty much open-minded, but I like people that work on the house, so like air conditioning, plumbing. I like that.
Home services?
Yeah, like homes. Yeah. the plumber that I used to work with was really big into all of these things, air conditioning plus home services and plumbing, of course. They were already famous for plumbing. So what their deal was is how do they get known for air conditioning or for home services when everybody knows them as a plumber?
That makes sense. So let me ask you. Well, actually, let me clarify a couple things. So it sounds to me that even though your current client base might be a little less diverse, what you're looking to do is you're looking to expand your services to clients that provide some sort of home service contracting type situation. And if you could specialize on that, you would be pretty happy.
I'm not sure because my problem is that I like talking with anybody.
Sure.
And I'm not. I know people recommend that you should niche market yourself, and so sometimes I struggle with that because I kind of like to talk with any type of business. I feel I can help anybody.
Sure, that makes absolute sense. But for the exercise today, we want to pick something, and I want to be clear about this for everyone. Whether or not you literally sell to anyone that has skin, as many of us have heard from certain representatives of the network marketing industry. The fact is, when you're talking to someone one-on-one, you have to figure out a way to make it personal to them. Okay? So even though you may work with lawyers, accountants, chiropractors, dentists, storefronts, plumbers, roofers, etc. Even though you may work with all of them, you have to figure out a way that when you say, have you ever noticed how, to either speak in a relatively specific term, such as notice how home service contractors or chamber events, to be a little bit more broad, or if you know you're talking to a lawyer, actually say the word lawyer. But the great thing about this is even though you aren't target marketing a niche, when you say these words for that moment, you want to, in the moment of that conversation, use a targeted niche so at least they can feel special. Does that make sense, Blaine?
Pretty much, except
okay.
that if I'm going to a chamber event and I'm just having a random conversation, I don't really know what they do until we start a conversation.
Sure, and if they don't tell you before you can introduce yourself, you still don't know, right? Okay, so what you have to do is you have to make a choice, and that choice can be just like we did with Yvonne, where we said chamber members, okay? Or you can speak to something more specific if you're more comfortable with it. Now, because of your background with the plumber and the fact that you are, if someone were to tell you, look, you have a limited budget, therefore you have no choice but to pick a niche for the next 2 weeks and you can't talk to any other niche, what niche would you choose? The purpose of that is simply for this exercise. What would that niche be?
I'll say plumber.
Plumber. Okay. Can we be a little bit more broad? Like home service something?
Absolutely. Yeah. People
Okay.
that work around the home.
All right. So let me ask, if you were talking to someone that falls into that category, is there a term in your local area that they identify themselves, such as contractors, such as home service providers, such as home built? I'm not familiar enough with the industry that what I'm trying to get to is there a way they think of themselves other than just a plumber, since the guy's not just a plumber?
I think home services is a widely accepted term.
Okay, home services what? Or just provides home services?
Home services, anything from restoration to remodeling to air conditioning and plumbing.
Okay.
Anything to make the house better.
Okay.
So, yeah,
So let me get someone else to jump in, and maybe Chris, you can help with this. So what I'm trying to think of is, if you say just home services, what came to my mind was maids, which obviously is not what we're talking about. Chris or anyone
Yeah.
else, do you have any other suggestions?
Home services definitely refers to me to either that or Home Depot. You know, so I don't know. It's not into plumbing as far as home services go.
Yeah, so for me, it's not specific enough.
No,
Is anyone else
it's a broad,
sharing
very
my?
broad category. Go ahead.
Yeah. Does anyone else have any suggestions? Here locally, they all refer to themselves either as handymen or contractors. So I'm trying to kind of think of what it is, and I'm just trying to come up with a term that we can use that would be more fitting.
contract, fine. Contract is pretty good.
Contractor?
Yeah.
Okay. So have you ever noticed how home service contractors will use? Okay. All right. So often experience. Now, you were beginning to describe how the plumber is annoyed by the fact that no one really knows he does stuff other than plumbing. Is that what you said earlier?
Yes.
Okay. Why does it annoy him, and why does it give him grief that happens?
Because he makes more money on some of the other things. A lot of the plumbing jobs they get, I mean, believe it or not, we're not paying as well as, say, putting in an air conditioner or doing other larger jobs, but they keep getting calls for the small jobs.
Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try to dig underneath to see what underlying problems is. So is part of the problem that their online marketing might be limited to only one or two specialties that aren't necessarily their most profitable businesses?
Right.
Okay, can we maybe say that the problem is that how do they educate their customers and prospective customers about all the different types of services that they do?
That's good.
Okay, now. When the situation is where they get a call for plumbing, is the problem for him, how does he educate his existing customers, or how does he get customers online that are not for plumbing? Which one of those is his problem?
The second one.
The second one. So he wants to get more leads in something other than plumbing, because plumbing is not his most profitable service.
Yes, I mean they want people who are searching for air conditioning or searching for insulation or something like that to find them.
Okay. All right. So I'm just going to say this out loud once just to see if it's starting to make sense. And what I want you to do is I want you to tell me if it's making sense or not, what I'm saying. So have you ever noticed how home service contractors often experience the problem of not being able to effectively market all of their areas of specialty?
Yeah.
Or often experience, not having any marketing for their most profitable services.
I like that best.
Does that make sense, Blaine, how I got there?
Yeah.
Yeah, it does? Okay. So can you regurgitate that back to me about the have you ever noticed through the often experience, talking specifically about the more lucrative or more profitable services?
Okay. Peter, have you ever noticed that home serving contractors like yourself that find it difficult to reach customers who are looking for other services that are more profitable than just the plumbing or just some of the basic services?
Okay. On the have you ever noticed how, don't say like yourself. Don't ever say like yourself. And this is for all of you. The moment you say like yourself, they will think you're a salesperson. And what I like to call the reptile brain will shut off. Okay. So have you ever noticed how home service providers often experience, and the reason we want to say often experience, if you can actually use those words, is because we want them to use the part of the brain that is attached to emotion, and the part of the brain that's attached to emotion is the experiential part. So if you can get them to remember a similar experience, that you're now connecting to their emotional brain. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so I just wanted to give clarity on why we're using these actual words. So can you do it again? And this time, just make sure you use the often experience and don't say like yourself.
Yeah, that's interesting. Now, have you ever noticed that home serving contractors often experience inability to reach customers that are looking for other types of services that are more profitable than just basic plumbing?
Okay, so inability to reach, almost. So their inability is not to reach, but to know how. Right? So the problem is not that they can't reach them. The problem is they don't know how. Right? So it's a distinction of the problem that you're solving. Like, their problem is not they can't reach them. The problem is they don't know how to reach them. Does that make sense? How we want to be clear about what the problem is? Because if they don't know, and what this is about making sure that they have no choice but to agree. So they may not necessarily agree that they can't reach them, but they can agree that they don't know how to reach them. Does that make sense?
Okay. So have you ever noticed that
No. Often experience.
contractors often experience that they don't know how to reach certain customers that they're other than their basic plumbing customers.
How about often experience? I like the word inability, but you can also say can't find, or you can say it both ways. But let's stick to inability for a second. Often experience the inability to find customers for their most profitable services, and what we want to distinguish is not. They don't have a problem finding customers. It's for those other things, right? Now, if you're engaged in a conversation with someone and you know you're going to use this, and you have a chance to ask them while they're talking about themselves, what's your most profitable service? Like, what service do you do where you make the most money? And they come back and say roofing for sure. You can change this and say, have you ever noticed how home service providers often experience the inability to find more roofing customers?
That's good.
Right? So you only have to be broad for as long as you don't know the actual answer.
Okay.
Right? So once you have that answer, if you can manage to get it out of them, and when you're talking to them and they're talking about themselves, ask the question if it's going to help you later on when they finally ask you. One quick note for everybody. People love talking about themselves. So as long as you go into a conversation confident, which is we hope what we're teaching you here is to be confident when you go into these chamber events. be confident in asking the person about themselves, because if you can get them to talk about themselves first, when it's time for you to introduce yourself, you now have information about them that you didn't have before, which will once again make you more confident. So people love talking about themselves, so just give them a chance.
Oh, Peter.
Yes.
Oh, I was going to say, I like that question about just asking them what do they do that is most profitable for them.
Yes.
And a specific question, and then once you get that answer, you know you've got something that you can latch onto.
Yes, and just make sure that you ask that question once you find out what industry they're in, and that you coach it in terms of which service they provide. So if you just say, what do you do that's most profitable for you, that's a little bit sketchy.
Yeah.
So make sure you say, well, as a divorce lawyer, what type of client is most profitable for you? As a home service provider, which service do you provide that makes you the most money? So be clear that if you're going to ask a question like that you want to be a little bit more specific and it's based on what they've already told you. It's about getting a little bit deeper. Just to kind of fill in this little sheet for you, which, after you do it a number of times, it will become easier. And that's why you would ask a question like that. So that's awesome that we figured that out.
Okay.
All right. So
Peter, I got to throw up a warning sign. We're past the hour and a half mark.
Okay.
So
all right.
I think we could, you and Blaine can boil this down to specifics.
Absolutely. So have you ever noticed how home service providers often experience the inability to find the most lucrative customers or customers for their most lucrative services? And the person will most likely agree, says, and then we're going to describe the problem you solve so that they get something out of it. Now, we'll just do a couple questions back and forth, and then we'll see if we can wrap this up for everyone. So the plumber that you're working with already who wants to sell other services, how are you going to help him make that transition? Is there a particular thing that you do or service that you provide that will help him get there?
In that situation, maybe pay-per-click.
Pay-per-clicks, okay. All right. So if you're using pay-per-clips, is there a pay-per-clicks, not paper-clips? Is there something about pay-per-click advertising that we can describe it in such a way that most people will make sense out of the words we're using? So as an example, run ads on Google.
Yes, well, you
right.
could, run ads on Google or Facebook by reaching out to potential customers who are looking for air conditioning.
Right. So you can say, for example, well, I help or I work with home service contractors to target or to put ads on Facebook and Google to target people actively looking for roofing quotes. Does that make sense? How I'm trying to be a little specific?
Yeah.
Right. So, and the reason you may not even want to say Facebook or Google ads, you may just want to say online ads, or you can even say to help. Well, I help you create ads on the internet so that when someone is looking to do services such as roofing, your ads will show up wherever they go on the internet. Right? That's kind of like Facebook retargeting, right? So there's a couple of different ways to say it, but just because of time, we'll kind of jump ahead. And then the so that is, what does the plumber get out of it? What would happen for that plumber if, and let's just assume that roofing's one of the areas that he wants to expand. What would happen if he got a bunch of roofing clients next month? What would be the outcome that client of yours would experience?
So they would be spending more of their time on the most profitable jobs.
So what's the advantage to him to spend the most time on the most profitable jobs?
And so that helps to increase their they're making more revenue every month.
More revenue, or in this case, profits, because we're talking about profitable, right?
Right.
Now, does he want to work less, or does he want to make more money?
Make more money.
Okay, and why does he want to make more money?
Because got to put their daughter into college.
Okay, so he wants to pay for his kids' education. Okay, so we can say, well, I work with plumbers that want to expand their services to other more profitable services, so that they can make more money with less time on the job, so they can pay to pay for their child's college. So now, if you notice, every time I give an example, it's a little different, and that's perfectly acceptable. Every time you do this, even if you talk to 15 plumbers back to back to back to back, every time it will be different. And every time you might say, you may use a different problem. Every time you may use a different outcome. But what becomes specific is that the person identifies something about what you're saying to represent them. The problem that you describe makes sense to them as a problem that they may have, or someone they know has, if it's a referral. And then you explain something that they can comprehend, such as online ads versus something as convoluted as saying retargeting ad pixels, right? You never want to say those words to someone. In order to solve the problem you previously mentioned, so that their life is improved, if you're able to, in a way they previously mentioned that they want to improve their life. Does that all make sense? Okay. Now, the reason I kind of jumped ahead there is because of the time we were on. And like I said, I'm available to help people through some of these discussions. And I may not have time to work one-on-one with everyone, but one thing I can do is that I'm not sure how we're going to pull it off technically yet, Chris, but if people want to communicate with me via email or some form like that, maybe we can figure out a way for people to send me their notes, send me their scripts that they've worked on, and I can give some feedback. And then if I have time to actually work with them one-on-one, in some instances, I can make time. But with 100 people in the group now, I want to make sure that it's not a full-time job.
Well, Peter, do this. Why don't you go ahead and put up a 3-minute video on that very topic?
On how to reach out to me?
Yep.
Okay. I'll figure that out. And what I might actually do is put my contact information somewhere that I can put a link on that video.
Very good.
Okay, perfect.
All right. Blaine, thank you for participating. I appreciate it. Yvonne, thank you. I know you're still on. I appreciate that. Devin,
Yep, I'm still here.
Devin, thank you for participating.
Yep, you're welcome.
There's and all the people on board here. I hope you have something to take home, so to speak, and use for yourself.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, thank you. Always. The main thing is that this is almost like a mastermind group without having to pay for it. I mean, if you think about it, I have been in major mastermind groups that don't go into depth on specific topics like we're doing here. That they ramble around and they try to talk about products and stuff like that. They don't get down to the basics. in this group,
Mhm.
we've been able to get down to the basics and really get a core value of what it's all about to be in the trenches in digital marketing as a small agency. And so that's what I really want to project here as we move forward with the local chamber influencers. And I hope people understand that as we move forward. So thank you all for being here. I'll have this up for replay as quickly as possible because it's been a tremendous value. Peter Ronanelli,
Thank you, Peter. Great job.
I hope that was the right I spoke that right. Did I speak that right?
It was.
Okay, and I know everybody here has the same thing. Say thank you to Peter, guys. Come on, open up the mic.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Peter.
Peter.
Cheers,
Thank
mate.
you, everyone.
Thanks, Peter.
See there? I mean, from all over the place. All right, cool beans.
Peter, have you ever noticed how many people?
Ever notice how many people don't like you? I'm just telling you. All right, cool beans, and everybody have a great afternoon. Thank you all.
Very much.
Very good.
All right.
Have a great
Bye-bye.
day.